Let's bring in Chris Stigall.
He is Chris Stigall.
Chris Stigall.
I'm joined now by Chris Stigall.
Host of the Chris Stigall Show.
So let's bring in talk radio host Chris Stigall.
Also, his podcast is a must-listen every day. Chris Stigall Show podcast.
And host of the Chris Stigall Show.
Let's bring in Chris Stigall.
Please welcome Chris Stigall.
The Chris Stigall podcast is presented by usmedicalplan.com. Save big money monthly and get better health coverage at usmedicalplan.com.
Well, hey there, how do you do? And welcome into the Chris Stigall Show podcast. I appreciate you subscribing and downloading this show and making it a destination with regularity. It means a ton to us. I know there are a lot of places you could be. And it really helps us when you leave that 5-star review and that written review at Apple Podcasts and Spotify. If you have the time to scroll down to the bottom of the menu of shows and leave 5 stars, that helps us grow a lot. And of course, if you ever want to pass this show around to somebody else, we're always grateful for you spreading the word, because your endorsement of this show means more than anything I can do myself in terms of marketing or otherwise. So thank you very much. And thanks for supporting the sponsors who make this show possible, like John Ruhlman, the guy that runs usmedicalplan.com. And he wants to talk to you if buying health insurance is something you dread or you're doing and you think, I can't afford it, it's breaking me. I'm a small business guy. I want to treat my employees well. Or maybe you're somebody who has 2 or 3 employees, not a whole staff, but just 2 or 3, and you still want to give them health insurance, but it's costly. Look, have you shopped group insurance with John? USMedicalPlan.com works with 80 different private health insurers around the country, so John will shop and compare what you're currently paying. He's not going to give you cut rate coverage either. This is the thing that a lot of people worry about. They say, well, okay, if John gets me a cheaper rate, does that mean I'm not going to be covered as well? No. In fact, what John has told me a lot is he gets on the phone with people who complain about how much they're paying, and then he tells them, you know what, and you're not really getting the kind of coverage you think you're getting. So John does 2 things right away. He assesses the insurance you have, tells you whether the coverage is any good or not, then immediately goes to work to find you something less expensive with as good as or better than coverage that you currently have. So if you're a small business, if you are an individual, if you're a senior citizen, if you're a young person and you need supplemental coverage, or you just need a policy that you don't have at all, please reach out for just a couple of minutes and talk to John's team about it. They also have a great customer care program so that you're not doing bureaucratic nonsense, waiting on the phone, back billing and paperwork and blah, blah, blah. I love that John is a one-stop shop and a full resource for all your insurance needs, affordability, and full coverage. That is the name of his game. He's a young father himself, so that matters to him. It matters to me, and him taking great care of this audience is the most important thing to me. So cheaper insurance, better coverage, usmedicalplan.com, usmedicalplan.com, or 877-410-4321. Hey, Fast Eddie, do you think we can get Fauci on? He's out there with a book tour. You think he'll come on and talk with us? Or is he only going to selected favored cable news stations?
Oh, he'll absolutely come on the show, Chris. He did before. Yeah, he's peddling a book. Of course.
You know, in fact, Fauci's one famous visit to this show was early on in the pandemic, and it was early on when he told us that things were hunky-dory with Donald Trump. People forget this. It might be worth breaking this thing back out since he's on a book tour and refreshing people's memory about 2 unique things that he said, I think, only on this show and never said again. But he admitted here. And I think they were 2 pretty significant things. Number 1, it was off-label use of medicines like ivermectin, which was later mocked as horse dewormer and horse paste and things like that. And then we ended up finding out it actually did work. And Fauci, at the time, when we asked him about it, we told him that people were using it, calling us and saying, hey, some doctors are saying that this medicine that they give and some other African countries to stave off things like mosquito-borne viruses and things like that, they're taking it. And everybody was calling it horse paste. That was back when they claimed that Trump was injecting bleach into his system and stuff like that. And so we asked Fauci, is this something that you'd recommend we try? It was pre-shot, of course. It was before Big Pharma rolled out with their suggested shots. And is this something you'd recommend we try? And he said, oh, sure. Sure, go ahead, try it. Doctors use medicines in an off-label way all the time. Of course, nobody ever referred to that again. And Fauci never suggested ever again that you do anything but take a shot. In fact, he's out there today saying that the shot is absolutely scientifically proven life-saving. Take a listen to this yesterday. He's back to this. Take the shot. It works perfectly every time it's tried.
Head into a moment where, because of that divisiveness, it's become a political issue. Like vaccinations in particular have become a political issue, where you have not just Donald Trump, but other Republicans saying, no, don't take the COVID vaccine. We have other prominent figures saying, no, you should not take other vaccines as well for other things that have been standard, that everyone has received for decades. So with this much of disinformation and anger and just flat out vaccine hesitancy, how nervous are you about our ability to handle the next pandemic, whatever it might be?
I'm very concerned about that, because the misinformation and disinformation about absolutely scientifically proven life-saving interventions, it's astonishing to me that so many people, by political ideology, will make a decision that would actually endanger their lives. I mean, the facts are, and as a physician and a scientist, this is very painful to me, that if you look at red states versus blue states, because of people getting less vaccinated because you're a Republican versus a Democrat, there are more deaths and hospitalizations in red states versus blue states. That's horrible that happens, that people suffer and die because of misinformation that's related to a political ideology.
Well, I agree with him on that last point. A political ideology is what drives his entire existence. Now, I don't know, and I have a funny feeling that's probably not true, that more people died in red states than blue states. In fact, I think that's been vetted before, but I'd have to look into that a little further. But he's out there suggesting that these shots were life-saving, when in fact we know that these shots were not only not effective, we know that they didn't prevent spread whatsoever. And we now know, and we're going to talk with Chris Kobach today, who is the Attorney General of Kansas and was a former Trump administration official with the border specifically and sealing up the border. So we'll have lots to talk to him about that too. But Kobach is suing Pfizer on behalf of Kansas, and I think he's the fifth state to do it. And they're suing Pfizer for the misinformation of suggesting that you take this thing and it will lead to eureka, you staving off the virus. It doesn't stave off the virus. And furthermore, now we know that it seems to cause some real, in some people, I'm not saying everybody, but in many people, it's causing things like myocarditis. But he's out there, as of yesterday, on network television, still pushing this and selling a book to boot. Over on CBS, talking with Nate Burleson in the morning. Fauci and old Nate get into a conversation specific, and this is where, Fast Eddie, while I play this, I'd like you to go specifically find where Dr. Fauci talks with us about his relationship with Donald Trump. We still have that in the system, don't we?
Yes, sir.
Do you have that at the ready?
I'm almost positive I do.
Okay, so while you dig for that, let's play yesterday's visit with Dr. Fauci on CBS this morning with Nate Burleson talking about Fauci's relationship with Trump.
Yeah, and for the American people, if we can't really grasp the science, we lean on our leadership.
Right.
And you spoke about your relationship and write about your complicated relationship with former President Donald Trump. He could possibly be our president again. Given that you know him personally, from a public health perspective, do you believe he is fit to lead us if he is elected president?
You know, I don't want to get into what's fit or not. That I want to
from
stay
a public health, health perspective.
From a health standpoint, he missed opportunities to use the bully pulpit of the presidency to tell people to do things that would keep them safe. That's what bothers me as a public health person, as a physician, who my only care and goal is the safety and the protection of the American public and their health. And for example, he could have said when the masks came out and the CDC said wear a mask, instead of saying I don't want to wear a mask, he could have said mask saves lives. Yeah. I'll wear a mask. And then all the people who follow him religiously would have been wearing masks, and it would have been the same thing.
Hang on to every word.
Note the dig there. Never mind the scientific misinformation. Masks didn't work. Masks did not work. Let's not forget that. I know you haven't. But he still talks about them like they do. And if he just used the bully pulpit and told the people who follow him religiously that masks save lives, well, more people would have had those things strapped to their faces and not been so disobedient. Remember, he is pissed off that he lost his ability to unilaterally dictate what he wanted everyone in the country to do. He has lost all credibility now. So he's on a book rehab tour trying to clean up his image on his way out as the highest paid official in government. And never forget that either, that this guy made more money in government than anybody, bit more than the president, more than the director of the CIA, more than the attorney general, more than the president of the Senate. There is no government official in Washington, D.C. that has pocketed more coin than this guy. And he has a Napoleon complex like you can't believe. Tiny little pocket-sized diminutive guy who has been deferred to his entire career. And if Trump made any errors on this front, it was that he was this trusted name in public health since the Reagan administration. And I have every reason to defer and understand that people would defer to Dr. Fauci in what's called a pandemic. I mean, you're Donald Trump and the economy's rolling along and you're in a re-election year. And they tell you that old people are dying by the score. And I think the best way to stave this off, Mr. President, is to get people to mask up and quarantine them. Well, I don't know. You've been in charge of public health since Reagan. I'm a developer. I'm a business guy. Okay, I'm going to listen to you. Now, I get people quibble and say, well, he shouldn't have listened to him, or he shouldn't have listened to him that long, or whatever. Okay, stipulated, fair enough. But this conversation with Fauci about, do you like Trump? Did Trump do enough? Well, he should have used his bully pulpit to tell his people who follow him religiously. You were followed religiously, you little goon. People didn't stitch Trump's face on their pillows. Public officials, governors, remember the wicked snow queen who used to do, Gretchen Whitmer, who told people they couldn't vote? She used to do interviews on cable news, and she had a pillow with his head stitched on it. People had Fauci bobblehead dolls on their, they made little shrines to him in their backdrop when they would do TV hits, the Democrats did. Remember this? They say Trump's the religious figure. Please. You were. They put you on the cover of magazines. You got to throw out the first pitch. You were loving life. Let's not. Yeah, you're the humble servant, and Trump was the godlike figure that everybody was following religiously, please. So Trump was not receptive to Fauci. Is that right? So we're going back out on the tour with the book saying Trump was not listening. Fauci just couldn't get his attention. Trump, he could have used his bully pulpit to do more of what I wanted him to do. That's funny, because when he visited with us, and I very specifically asked him about what was already then rumored to be a contentious relationship with him, how are things working? How are things going? I asked him that very thing here, and I don't know that anybody else really asked it, and I don't know that anybody has really picked up on it since, and I'm going to start shopping this around again since he's doing his little book tour. Not that anybody's going to be interested in hearing it, because I know now it's sexy to do revisionist history. But we have the original audio of when he visited this show in year one, when I think we were still in the middle of 15 days to slow the spread or whatever. And here was his conversation with me about his relationship with Donald Trump.
I think by now you understand, well, you've understood the game for a long time. Media seems very, very keen to try to figure out your every move and every gesture and what it means and what it doesn't mean. And is there a rift and what goes on behind closed doors with you and President Trump? And I've had more than a few people point out you weren't present at the briefing yesterday and the one before that. And now people are trying to read meaning into this. So do you care to address that?
Sure. There really is nothing to that. We have a team on the task force. I'm up there most of the time. Every once in a while, I have to get back to my job at the National Institutes of Health because we're the ones that are responsible for developing the drugs and the vaccines.
that are going to be important. So I spend every day, part of the day, at the White House, sometimes all day at the White House. Occasionally there'll be a time where I need to leave and just go back and do my job, my day job, and then come back. Reading into my not being there as a rift with the president is absolutely ridiculous. It really is. There's nothing like that going on at all.
And in fact, I think that went on. I think I asked him a follow-up after that and just clarify. So there is nothing between the two of you. No problem whatsoever. I think I asked it again a second time. Doesn't matter. But the point is you get it. No. He's great. Is there anything No, I know what it was. I specifically asked him, is there anything you've asked him to do that he's not done? Do we have that? No? All right. We'll find it later. I specifically asked him, has Trump disregarded your advice? Is there anything you've told him to do that he hasn't done? And Fauci said no. He has done everything I've asked him to do, which, in hindsight, I get some people say, well, that's the problem, Chris. That's where my criticism of Trump comes in. Well, maybe, but I just would like the record to reflect, and particularly before, in fact, it probably would be important to get this to the Trump campaign prior to the debate. Because if this comes up, and I suspect it will, given that bird flu is in the news. A lot of you reached out to me about the Marty McCary interview on bird flu yesterday, so I spent a little more time on that. I'm not going to today, but I did spend more time on that at the Harumph Society today. I don't really reach any conclusions about it, but I had been thinking throughout the day yesterday about bird flu and kind of what it meant to some of you in that conversation. And, I get that it spooked some people, and other people reacted to it very negatively, like Marty was lying to us about it or trying to whip us up. I don't think he's a sensational guy, but nevertheless, that will be the focus of today's Harumph Society. So Kobach on the way to talk about suing Pfizer a little later in the show, which should be interesting. Tim Robbins, the lunatic left-wing actor, married to the lunatic left-wing Susan Sarandon, who's pro-Hamas. I wonder how things are going at the house between Tim and Susan these days. Are they still married, Fast Eddie? Do we know?
I thought they were still together.
I don't see them together anymore. Susan spends most of her time chanting in the streets for Hamas. She wants to wear a burqa and be subjugated, which is interesting. Tim Robbins, on the other hand, I've always known him to be a left-wing loony, but I don't know, lately maybe COVID sobered him up a little bit or something. Was this Russell Brand's podcast he was on? It looked like Russell Brand I saw in the video.
Yes, it was.
All right. Who also has a show, because who doesn't? And Russell Brand is talking with the actor Tim Robbins of one of the great films I love to watch probably 5-6 dozen times a year, Shawshank Redemption. It's really the only film that I think of when I think of Tim Robbins, and it's a fantastic film. So there's Tim sitting with Russell Brand, and they're talking about COVID, and Robbins starts to go down this road of how much he laments the way people treated one another during COVID. Now, I just want to remind you, here's Dr. Fauci. As of yesterday, the same day that I found this audio. Now, I don't know if this conversation with Tim Robbins happened yesterday. I just happened to see it yesterday. But it was notable to me that on the same day Fauci's running around, again, demonizing and putting people into columns and camps. There were the people that behaved and did the right thing and took a shot and wore a mask. And then there were people that were belligerent and didn't. And they died, and they were religious zealots who followed their religious cult leader, Trump, who also didn't adhere to his advice and didn't do what he told them to do, which isn't true, and he told us so. But the demonization continues. You're stupid, you're dumb, you're a cult member who follows Trump if you didn't do what I say, even though science has completely vindicated those of us who questioned the shot and questioned how deadly COVID really was. He continues to insist he's the one that saved lives, and Trump cost lives. Even though to much of your frustration out there, Trump's the one that continues to say, listen, I'm the guy who went Operation Warp Speed. I'm the guy that got the damn shot to market as fast as it did, which is true and fair. Even if you're pro-shot, you can't not give Trump the credit for clearing the red tape for getting the shot to market. But anyway, I hate all this revisionist history. This is all very fresh in my mind. It will not be not fresh in my... I was talking to somebody the other day about it. It is a period in history that a lot of people wish to forget. And there are even times when we really... Christine and I will sit and talk about, do you remember when we used to put tape on the floor in the grocery store? if you're walking down the aisle of a store, do you remember they put tape down the middle and you had to stay on one side of the tape or the other? They were telling you which way to walk up and down aisles at the store. Remember that? How Orwellian? See, we forget. We put that stuff out of our minds because it was such an unpleasant, such a creepy, such a totalitarian time. Most of us want to pretend it didn't happen. But it did really destroy lives. It destroyed far more lives than it killed people. That's for damn sure. Destroyed careers, destroyed student learning, made people alcohol and drug dependent. The ruin government left in people's lives, and it was government, make no mistake about it. Government was more reckless and more divisive and more poisonous to this country than the virus itself. I stand by that. And a lot of us have just tried to put it out of our minds. And we're in this economic mess today, by the way, because of it. Still today. You're paying 30% more for eggs and bread and all that other crap because of this little troll. You do know that, right? I mean, we're living this madness today because of that time. And everybody wants to pretend that didn't happen. Oh, I'm not pretending it didn't happen. I remember it well. There are elements of it I'm trying to put out of my head, to be perfectly honest, and I forget how bad it got. It got bad because of guys like this. This little bastard went around and tried to convince you that if you didn't wear a mask, you were a bad person. If you didn't take a shot, you were a bad person. Now, I don't remember where Tim Robbins was with this then. Maybe he was always this way. I can't say. But he's apparently had an epiphany 4 years later. And he now believes it was a terrible mistake to treat your fellow American the way we did if, in fact, you had questions about the stupid shot and masks. Interesting conversation here with Russell Brand. Listen to this. And listen, let me just say before we play this, if there were more people like Tim Robbins in this country saying this, no matter what his politics are, do you realize the healing that would happen in this country if there were more people willing to say what you're about to hear him say? Just simply say, we really got it. Well, okay, look, I get it. Maybe egos are in the way. Maybe you don't want to say, oh, we got it wrong. Maybe at a minimum say, there are a lot of questions about that period, and rather than treat people the way we did, maybe we should have entertained more questions and had more conversation that would have been productive instead of demonizing people and putting them into camps. If there were people, and Marty and I were talking about this yesterday, if the medical community were more willing to just come out and say, boy, we said things and made you do things that were wrong. We caused real hysterics for no real reason in hindsight. And rearview mirror, that was an error, and we're awfully sorry, and we're going to try to do better next time. Do you know how far that would go? I spent so much time thinking about this yesterday when the bird flu thing came up. Because there are going to be millions of people in this country, if in fact there's real danger, who will never listen again to anybody in public health. For good reason. And I was getting back in a back and forth briefly with somebody yesterday who said, oh, Stigall, Marty's just out there trying to sell a book. He's just doing what they used to do, whipping people up for no reason at all. Bird flu. Get out of here with your stupid bird flu. I said, maybe. I don't know Marty McCary personally. I know that we've depended on him a lot on this show for medical insights, and he has been a very calm, rational voice at a time when everyone else was being hysterical. So I've always appreciated that about him. And when he comes here and he says the bird flu's much worse, and while humans haven't contracted it yet, people are out there monkeying around in labs trying to figure out how to make this jump to humans, and I do think it's only a matter of time. And if that happens, I think this is a far more deadly prospect than COVID ever was. Now, was he being hysterical? Some of you thought so. Some of you thought he was trying to hawk a book. Fine, I don't know. Can't get into his head and his head and heart. I don't think that's true, but maybe you do. Fine, whatever. But my point is, if he's right, or if anybody or anything like this comes along in the future and they're waving to the public and they're saying, hey, there's a problem, real problem, like serious, batten down the hatches, we got a real problem coming. What's the likelihood millions of us are going to flip the bird and say, I'm not listening to you. You lied to us. You locked us down. You destroyed our businesses. You caused learning loss with my kids. You made my aunt chemically dependent now. My nephew killed himself. We relocated halfway across the country because of you. I'm not going to listen to you ever again. You scream and tell me the next thing's coming. I'm not listening. What if this time he's telling the truth? The damage these people did because they would not apologize. This arrogant little troll is going on a book tour and at this hour still going on shows saying, I was right all along and anyone who opposed me was wrong. He's doing more harm today for public health than he ever did in public health service when he was in office. Think of that. He's destroying public health in one book tour. With the how many decades since Reagan he's been serving in public health? In one book tour, he's going to do more to tear down his entire resume. Sowing seeds of dissent and discord and mistrust in the public health sphere. It's a tragedy, actually. And so back to Tim Robbins. If more people spoke like Tim Robbins, if Anthony Fauci went on a book tour and spoke like Tim Robbins, I don't want to speak for you, but I would lean in a little closer and say, I appreciate the contrition. I appreciate the humility. I appreciate the reflection. I'm inclined to listen to you because you sound like an honest broker who's willing to say, in hindsight, I probably didn't get that right or behaved very well. Here's Robbins.
This was changed as well. We went into lockdown with healthy people and with children, and that didn't seem to be wise to me. So I'm not a scientist. I'm not a doctor. I don't know the intricacies of data on this. All I can respond to is as someone that is concerned about what the result of those doctrines, that policy had on us as human beings. And it's not good. We turned into tribal, angry, vengeful people. And I don't think that's something that is sustainable for the earth, that we start demonizing people that don't agree with our particular health policies and turn them into monsters, turn them into pariahs, say that they don't deserve a hospital bed. I think about, people that have made bad mistakes in their lives where they take too many drugs and they overdose, and that's totally their choice. That's totally their responsibility. Yet we take care of them. Yet we bring them to the hospital. Yet we save their lives because we're compassionate, because we want to make sure that people live. And this turned. It turned into you should fucking die because you have not complied. That's incredibly dangerous.
Tim Robbins on the Russell Brand Show saying, we went from a place where even the drug addict, who is basically killing himself with his own addiction, and it's his choice to do it, we still have always committed to taking care of the drug addict. But for some reason, at some point, history turned, and during COVID, we said, if you don't do what we tell you, if you choose not to take the shot, if you choose not to wear a mask, you should effing die. Is he wrong? He's not. Who got angry? Who turned tribal and angry and vengeful? Just for the historical record, who turned tribal, angry, and vengeful? Who? Was it you and me? Who questioned? Who asked? Who said, is it really right to shut our church? Is it necessary I wear this stupid mask? Are you telling me I can't cross the county border to go to my aunt's for Thanksgiving this year? Are you telling me my out-of-state family can't come in to the state because they may bring with them something from their state? I have questions about that. So when that dialogue was happening, who turned tribal, angry, and vengeful? Just for the record, was it us? Did we say, you're not welcome at our Thanksgiving table, or we don't want to be around you if you're wearing a mask? Do you remember people saying that? I don't. What I remember is, if you walked into a Home Depot, because this happened to me, My wife and I walked into a Home Depot without masks because we said, to hell with it, we're not doing this anymore. And I remember a man yanking his 3-year-old daughter away from us in horror when we rounded a corner and we were the only 4 people in an aisle. He was at one end of it, we were at the other. And as we approached one another, he jerks his little girl out of the way and berates Christine and me for being selfish in front of his little daughter. Who turned tribal, angry, and vengeful? Let's let the record reflect who it was. Let's look in the rearview mirror and remember. Now, again, I appreciate Tim Robbins saying this. I do. This is important. It's also important to remember who behaved this way and why. There was a why behind it. Why did we turn tribal, angry, vengeful? And I say we, I'm being generous. They. It was not we. There was no we. I didn't want my church closed. I didn't want my kids' school closed. I didn't want to wear a mask. I didn't want to show paperwork as what were we called? A necessary employee. I forget the word, Fast Eddie. We had federal paperwork that said we were important.
Yes, we were above essential. We were life-sustaining.
Life-sustaining radio is what we used to call ourselves. That's right. See, I forget the vernacular. But we were literally given federal paperwork, documents, that said we were allowed to drive to our place of business because we were essential. We were life-saving critical because of this microphone. And while that's true, I mean, I just am, and that's pandemic or no. Still in all, it's wrong that the federal government would... I'm just kidding out there. Still in all, it is amazing that that's where we were. I never advocated for that. I would guess most of you in this audience didn't. I assume some of you probably got scared and probably went overboard with it. Wiping down our groceries, Lysoling our Instacart orders. Remember all that? That's where we were. Mental cases. And if you didn't engage in this mental case behavior, you were a bad person. And it proved all nonsense. None of it worked. It was silly as hell. And instinctively, most of us knew it, or at least knew to question it. And Robbins is right. And if you did, you were called a cultist, following our religious leader, Trump. We turned tribal, angry, vengeful people. No, Tim Robbins, people on the left did. And they used it, of course, as a cudgel to push mail-in voting. It changed our election system. It changed our economy. It changed the way we relate to one another. It changed the way the entire... I would submit to you, the entire economic ecosystem in the United States has been inexorably altered forever because of that period of time. And it wasn't because people were asking questions. It was because, yes, your political side, I'm sorry to say, turned tribal and angry and vengeful. But at least he has the humility to admit it. And that's my point. If people like Fauci were going around on tour and saying what Tim Robbins was saying, I think they could actually really save lives. And you know how? Because if in fact there's another pandemic that really is much more deadly or serious, we'll be able to at least listen to somebody who was, okay, admittedly hysterical and wrong on one thing, but then came back and said, in my body of work, I've tried to get it right. On this one, I really screwed the pooch. And I'm sorry about that. Gosh, I hate the way I behaved. There's a lot about this that I need to unpack and figure out. Please forgive me. Do you know how far that would go, at least with someone like me? I'll speak for myself, maybe not you. But they don't. They don't. They go on book tours and they still shame you. And they still act like you're the Neanderthal. Good for Tim Robbins. As far as Dr. Fauci, well, screw him. Can't wait to see how his book sales do. Hey there, it's Chris, back on the phone with my dentist and friend, Bob Spinato at Williamsburg Dental in Broomall, Pennsylvania, just off the Blue Route with new technology. You have not just new associates, but they brought new technology into the business to make it a little easier for patients.
Yeah, it's a very exciting time in dentistry. We have now introduced a three-dimensional x-ray called a CBCT scan in our office, which allows us to diagnose and things earlier for patients. My daughter is placing a lot of implants in the past had referred out. It's now being done in-house. And we also, we've been using dental or computer scanners for taking impressions for crowns for about the last 2 to 3 years. We now have introduced the next step, which is a milling machine, and we can now make crowns in the office. Things can be completed in the same day as opposed to having a temporary crown put on and 3 weeks later coming back and having a permanent crown put on. It's really a game changer, and it's a time saver for our patients to not have to make multiple visits to the office.
Pick up the phone or go online, make that appointment, 610-353-2700 or williamsburg-dental.com. Anyway, let's go back where I specifically talked to him about his relationship with Trump. And if Trump did anything against his wishes or didn't listen to him or was difficult in any way, didn't give him what he needed, didn't adhere to his advice, this was 2021.
Oh, yeah.
2020. So This was literally 4 years ago, probably around this time, May, June. Take a listen.
So any suggestion that this president is summarily dismissing you because your science-based take on the news of the day or the events of this pandemic, he has no time for you because you're frustrating his agenda. That's put out there a lot. You would say to that?
No, that is completely untrue. I mean, I meet with him virtually every day, I think every day for the last weeks. He listens. I have never had a situation where I strongly suggested something to him that he rejected. And almost all the time when I say be careful about this, he listens, and he is. I mean, I think this idea of a conflict between the two of us is just absolutely not based on any reality.
I'm going to do my best to not ask you any political questions because you're not a politician, you're a doctor. But I do want to ask you about the media coverage of this event and as these events have unfolded. And you stand there every day watching this press corps fire questions at you, the president, the vice president, all your colleagues. Is this media, this press corps, are they fair? Are they doing the country well right now, in your view?
You know, I don't think I can make a judgment on that. They're trying to do their job. I have a great deal of respect for the United States media, the press. I mean, even the global press. They're trying to do their job. To some people, they may seem that they're being harsh. To others, they may seem that they're being not too harsh. So I don't really pass judgment on the media. I just think that most of them, obviously, when you have such a large group, there are going to be some of them in there that don't behave very well. But on the whole, I think the media do a good job.
All right, so he was smiles all around. We probably ought to send that out to the Trump campaign, just as a little refresher. There are new faces there. I think I'm going to send that to them just to remind them of what Dr. Fauci lovingly, glowingly said about Donald Trump on this show. And that Fauci, whenever that's volleyed, and it will come up. Fauci will come up. Trump's execution of COVID will come up. Fauci's on a book tour right now calling us cultists who follow our religious leader or didn't follow our religious leader. I think everyone should be reminded what Fauci said about him. He listens to me. He's never done anything I haven't asked him to do, which, again, I know is a real sticky wicket for a lot of you who are supporters of Trump. I get it. I hear from you, too. That's why a lot of you were supportive of DeSantis. You think that COVID was disqualifying, a lot of you, because of Trump deferring to Fauci so much. So, look, I'm sorry to go back down this. I realize that some of you get twitchy, like, please don't do any more COVID shows. You did years of these. I don't want to hear them anymore. If he's going on a book tour, I'm going to meet him where he is. This is not going to go unchallenged by me. We spent too long as a life-sustaining, government-sanctioned American with the paperwork to prove it behind this microphone every day while others cowered. And by the way, that was... just for the record, there were colleagues of mine in total panic, berating and screaming and yelling at those of you in this audience for not wearing a mask and not getting your shot and dutifully doing what the government told you. I had colleagues, I'm not going to name names, but I suspect you remember who they were too, who traditionally had always been about free speech and freedom and conservatism, and then suddenly got panicky and hid in their houses and strapped masks on their face and demanded you do the same. So I kept score, and I'm always going to keep score on that era. And I think we all should. Not that we lord it over people, but we should all remember this brought out the very best in some. This brought out the very worst in others. And I think you should remember where you stood. And I think you should remember where everyone that you trust or trusted stood. Been a while since we've talked with our friend, the Attorney General of Kansas, Chris Kobach. He made news again. He typically does. When you see his name, it always means he's done something interesting. And this time, he's not, he's not just picking a little fight. He's taken on one of the big dogs out there. And we're told you don't do this. You don't poke the bear called Pfizer. But Chris Kobach doesn't know a bear that he hasn't tried to poke once or twice before, and he's back. So, Mr. Attorney General, good to have you here. And I will say, I'm sure that there are many millions of Americans who probably are cheering you on with this decision. Good morning.
Yeah, good morning. Well, it was a decision that I felt compelled to take. And, what we did is we have launched a lawsuit that is a consumer protection lawsuit under our state's Consumer Protection Act. And all 50 states have a similar Consumer Protection Act. And we basically say that Pfizer made misleading and deceptive statements in advertising its COVID-19 vaccine. And specifically, they said a number of things that were contrary to what they knew. And I'll just give you a couple of examples, but the lawsuit, which is 69 pages long, goes into much greater detail, and there are other examples too. But one is its statements about pregnancy. Pfizer marketed the vaccine as safe for pregnant women. However, as early as October 2020, Pfizer possessed information from its own study on rats indicating that the COVID-19 vaccine was likely linked to infertility, loss of litters, and stillborn offspring. And then in February 2021, they possessed reports studying 458 pregnant women who received the Pfizer vaccine during pregnancy, and more than half of the women reported an adverse event, and more than 10% reported a miscarriage, many within days of the vaccination. So there was one major misstatement they made. Another one is Pfizer denying any evidence of a connection or what's called a safety signal between its COVID-19 vaccine and myocarditis or pericarditis. And again, Pfizer said in January of 2023, when asked whether its vaccine caused strokes or myocarditis, the chairman of the company, Albert Bourla, said, quote, we've not seen a single signal, although we have distributed billions of doses, end quote. But at that time, he knew that the U.S. government, the U.S. military, foreign governments, and others had found that Pfizer's COVID-19 vaccine caused myocarditis and pericarditis. So these statements, along with others, were ones that were misleading. And although the federal government has given the vaccine manufacturers immunity from being sued by individuals bringing a tort action saying, hey, you caused this injury to me, give me money to compensate me, the federal government did not give Pfizer immunity from any lawsuit brought on behalf of deception or misleading the public. And that's what this is. And one last point here, Chris, every single one of us in this country who's an adult had two decisions to make. Number one, am I going to take the vaccine? And number two, if I am going to take the vaccine, which one will it be? And if they make that second decision, it was made in a fairly urgent situation. Most people thought their safety might be at risk. Maybe their employer was giving them a deadline to take the vaccine. And in that situation where people are acting under, sort of quasi-duress, it's imperative that pharmaceutical companies speak honestly and do not deceive or withhold information that might mislead the public if they do withhold it. And that's what Pfizer did. Pfizer did not speak honestly to the public, and that's what this is about.
It's so interesting that we're having this conversation because yesterday's show focused on the possibility of a bird flu pandemic. And Dr. Marty McCary, who's a guy that, I trust and I like a lot, and he's had massive problems with the very same things you were just talking about with Pfizer. But he said there was such misinformation and so many lies told that he's really worried now that, there is a healthy amount of mistrust to the point that even if it's, it's kind of a boy who cried wolf thing. Pfizer and so many government officials lied so aggressively and threatened so many of us, like with our jobs. I mean, Joe Biden tried to use the Labor Department to force us all to take the damn thing. Some people did lose their jobs because of it. And now if we all really do face some kind of medical emergency, who the hell's going to have the authority to warn us all that we'll be believed? You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's exactly right. And ultimately, the government does it self-harm when it speaks in a way that's misleading. And I think companies like Pfizer, if they, I believe we will prevail in this lawsuit, then at the end of the day, they will have lost some trust. Pfizer is a great company. They've made a lot of great pharmaceuticals over the course of the company's history. But they also have something. They have stock and they have value in public trust. And if they don't speak honestly to the public, they will lose that. And I think that's something they need to consider.
The Attorney General of Kansas, Chris Kobach, joins us, filing a lawsuit Monday against the pharmaceutical company Pfizer, alleging the company made misleading claims about the COVID-19 shot and the risks associated with it. What does victory in this lawsuit look like? What's Pfizer's punishment, or what's justice served here?
Well, I think it could be one of several factors. One is we are the leading state in a 5-state coalition here. So in addition to Kansas, there are 4 other states that are on the cusp of bringing a lawsuit, or will be at the table if Pfizer, because they will eventually bring a lawsuit if Pfizer does not come to the table and try to settle. So Pfizer may settle. They may say, okay, yeah, you're right, you got us, and here's X number of dollars to these various states for our false and misleading claims. Or the other path would be that they would go to trial. We believe we would prevail in state court in Kansas, and then the court would set the damages amount. And we're seeking not only damages but also civil penalties under our Consumer Protection Act.
Chris, pivoting a little bit, because you have always been on the forefront of the issue of the border and illegal immigration. That has not ebbed even a little bit. I know you were once upon a time consulting with Team Trump on their immigration policy. I know it's something as Attorney General you continue to monitor as the top law enforcement official in Kansas. This seems worse than it's ever been. I mean, I remember when you and I talked years ago and Trump was running on building the wall. It was obviously important enough to Americans that he won. You were involved in crafting a lot of that. I guess the executive actions that were taken to start building a wall and controlling the border. It started to come under control, and now it's, again, wide open and worse than ever before. I would love to just kind of pick your brain generally about the state of things and how we tackle it, or is it, I don't know, is it entirely too late? I don't know your view.
It is worse than ever before. And it shows, sadly, how one president with an agenda that is, truly an open borders agenda, bringing people as easily as possible, as quickly as possible, it can undo so much that was done before. And because Trump didn't finish the wall, and let's be clear here, let's be honest, he started too late and got too little done, and only completed about 400 miles of the almost 2,000-mile border. The wall is, there's no wall. we have a partially finished barrier that just means that the incoming illegal aliens just go around to the various many openings. We now all of the good things that Trump did were essentially undone, and so now we are back to the point where we need to address this. And on top of all the things that Trump did, which must be done again, and the wall must be completed in the next presidential term, if Trump wins, we also have now a massive deportation undertaking. In addition to the 10 million plus illegal aliens that were already here, Biden has allowed in at least another 8 million. ICE is completely overwhelmed. It will take extensive cooperation between state and local law enforcement, who would be the ones, encountering the illegal aliens. ICE doesn't have patrol cars roving around the country. They need state and local law enforcement to cooperate, and ICE would need an operation for very quickly, massively deporting millions of people. And the last time ICE had a massive deportation effort like this was under President Eisenhower, and back then it was the INS. And the executive action that Biden just announced this week, I guess immediately issuing citizenship to everyone illegal who's married to a U.S. citizen, your reaction to that? It's against the law. He can't. And if he tries, Kansas will be bringing a lawsuit. And I'm sure we'll be joined by some other states who will be party to our lawsuit as well.
I'm just picking your brain on a few legal things. You and I have not really talked much throughout this entire Trump trial and the J6 stuff. I think we're very, very close. It sounds like maybe to the Supreme Court any time now. Maybe even as we're conducting this interview, they'll release their decision on the what they're calling presidential immunity. Do you have a sense of how you think that'll shake out, given these justices and their makeup?
I think that there will almost certainly be. I think the decision will go in Trump's favor, or in favor of there being some immunity. I think the question is, how wide will it be? Probably before the end of June. But yeah, beyond that, I hesitate to predict.
And just generally speaking, the legal community has, I mean, we were talking about the medical community and a lot of mistrust. Boy, some officers of the court have really made jackasses of themselves lately, have they not? And the Fannie Willis types, the Alvin Bragg types. How do you, as an attorney general, watch some of these people and their outrageous behavior?
Well, I look at it as the American judicial system in their states into a banana republic where the courts are being used to prosecute political enemies. And that has never been the case in America before. And now here we are. It's in those states, it's in those jurisdictions. You're not going to see that happen in Kansas or in the vast majority of states in the union. But still, it erodes confidence, and it's very troubling that we now have this happening. And so, in my capacity as Attorney General, I think it's even more important, since I'm the chief legal officer of the state, that we do the opposite. We are apolitical when we apply the law, and all people truly are before the law. But I don't know. I don't know how they turn it around in New York. They can turn it around, but they've done grave damage to the rule of law and to our country, where we are not a place where political opponents get prosecuted and the justice system is used as a political hammer. So I hope and pray that we can turn it around. I don't think we've talked about this at all, you and I. And I'll close with this: the raid on Trump's home, the spectacle in New York. The January 6th stuff in general, the Department of Justice, the American people feel that this Department of Justice is weaponized against its political enemies, and I don't know if you can fix that. Merrick Garland at the top of the food chain here is the Attorney General. Some people say you got to just tear down the entire DOJ, certainly the FBI, start anew. And again, I know you have studied law at the highest levels. You've argued before the Supreme Court. I mean, so you know this stuff and you love it. You've made it your life's work. So what is your view of the Department of Justice and the way many of us feel it can't be trusted and has to be melted down and rebuilt? So I worked at the Department of Justice for 2 years under John Ashcroft when he was Attorney General. I was his counselor. It is so troubling. The thing about the Department of Justice is it's so huge. There's so many attorneys, and it's got such a huge workload across the country that it needs to be reformed. I don't know if you can tear it down and still have our system function of federal prosecutions, but you can absolutely reshape it and reform it. And it starts at the top. The Attorney General has to acknowledge, the new Attorney General has to acknowledge that the Department of Justice has gone astray. And we can't have this constant, talk about, the Department of Justice has always been awesome. There needs to be a reckoning that the Department of Justice has gone astray and needs to be changed, and you have to have an Attorney General willing to do that. It won't be easy. The Justice Department is one of the deepest of the deep state agencies. There are people embedded in that department who are hardcore ACLU people who, have a political agenda, and they're not political appointees, they're career appointees. So they're there for the long haul. And so it's difficult for someone at the top to necessarily, root out every problematic attorney. But the bottom line is there needs to be real reform of the Justice Department so that it can regain the public's trust, and the FBI, of course, in many ways, even more than the rest of the Justice Department, but both. There needs to be a restoration of public trust, and that trust is lacking right now.
It's ironic to me that the Supreme Court, in my view, as a conservative, the Supreme Court is kind of the last thread holding the republic as we know it together. The left has so weaponized both, or made ineffective Congress, as well as or weaponized the executive branch, our Department of Justice, as you were just describing. Yet, ironically, they're targeting the Supreme Court, trying to discredit these people, from Alito to Thomas, and we've read all the stories. It's clear the left is now trying to tear down that third branch or take control of it. Isn't that your view?
Yeah, they would love to tear it down or reshape it, and they have fever dreams of a new court packing plan where they could just pack the Supreme Court with their own left-wing, non-originalist justices. The Supreme Court has been a wall on which many of Biden's illegal and unconstitutional efforts have been broken. And I think the other element, and why I'm honored to be a state attorney general, especially, is the state attorneys general have become the last line of defense. Yes. We're the ones getting the issue. Somebody has to get the issue to the Supreme Court. And you've got a number of Republican attorneys general, and I think Ken Paxton of Texas deserves a lot of credit, who have brought case after case whenever the administration has clearly transgressed the law. And that's what we're doing right now. And unfortunately, the Biden administration is just flooding the zone with illegal executive actions. And our workload is very heavy right now, trying to challenge all of these things that Biden is doing in what is hopefully his final year.
Well, I tell you, the state of Kansas is fortunate to have an attorney general like Chris Kobach. Incidentally, I'll let you go on this question. Any talk of rejoining Team Trump, or do you have nothing to do with one another now?
I have not been in conversation with Team Trump. Right now I've just got so much work to do with all these regulations we're challenging in court. No. In fact, this very week I'll be arguing in another one in court that's involving his Title IX efforts on the whole trans question.
Oh, yes. Yeah, plenty to keep you busy, sad to say. Chris Kobach, Attorney General of Kansas. Real pleasure to catch up, sir. Thanks for your time. At the very heart of our democracy lies a principle we hold sacred, and that's free speech. It's the cornerstone that supports every freedom we cherish, allowing ideas to flourish, debates to ignite, and progress to be made. Without it, our pursuit of liberty, our ability to challenge, or our capacity to innovate, it would be really constrained. Now, in today's digital age, the very platform that should democratize information is being allowed to narrow the spectrum of ideas we're exposed to. Really important discussions about our wealth, our rights, our future, systemically silenced or overshadowed in mainstream narratives, leaving many feeling voiceless in conversations that are really crucial to your financial independence and your security. And that's where the company Wealth Protection Research steps in. They're armed with a mission that's never been more critical. Wealth Protection Research is not a financial advisory firm. I want to be clear about that. They're defenders of free speech. They're committed to giving a voice to the silenced. In an era where dialogues about retirement, investments, economic freedoms are increasingly censored, Wealth Protection Research is focused on ensuring that diverse, controversial, and revolutionary ideas also get a platform. Wealth Protection Research tirelessly seeks out financial experts through leaders and thought leaders, trailblazers, all who've been pushed to the margins by mainstream media and tech platforms like Facebook and Google. These are the voices that challenge prevailing narratives, offering fresh, often contrarian perspectives on protecting and growing your wealth, especially as we navigate the uncertainties of this coming election. By spotlighting these thinkers, people like Jim Rickards or Porter Stansberry, Wealth Protection Research is not just sharing financial advice, they're fostering a movement toward a more open, informed, and free society. Wealth Protection Research has created a 2024 Election Wealth Protection Report, and it's a completely free report. It highlights the 3 best ideas for protecting and growing your money heading into the 2024 election, and it also contains ideas the mainstream media doesn't want to touch. Listeners to this show can get this whole thing completely free if you text the word ideas to 76626. Just text ideas to 76626, and if you do that today, you're also going to get a free gold investment kit from Wealth Protection Research. And the sponsor of that is Augusta Precious Metals, by the way, and we appreciate that. So just text ideas to 76626. 76626. If you're like me and you believe in the sanctity of free speech and the importance of financial freedom, act now. Text ideas to 76626. Claim your free copy of this 2024 election report. You know, it's time to widen the scope of what we're told. You know we believe that here. Hear the ideas that establishment folks can't handle and don't think you can handle. Take control of your own financial destiny. Text ideas to 76626 to claim your free copy. The battle for free speech is the battle for our future, and Wealth Protection Research ensures that the ideas capable of shaping our financial well-being are available to all of us who want to hear them. So don't wait. Grab your free report right now. Text ideas to 76626 and claim your free copy.
Other headlines today. Oh, here's another one. Another attack on a 13-year-old girl in a New York park by an illegal. An Ecuadorian illegal in NYPD custody after a broad daylight rape. Wow. A machete-wielding man approached two 13-year-olds, one boy, one girl, tied them together by the wrists, and raped the 13-year-old girl in a public park in broad daylight in Queens. 25-year-old illegal from Ecuador entered the country illegally in 2021 near Eagle Pass, Texas, with a 3-year-old child at the time, which I'll bet was probably not his. And I guess 10 neighborhood folks saw this guy in the neighborhood and piled on him and held him down until the cops came. This is a neighborhood where Trump grew up, by the way, in Queens. Trump said this is horrific, something like this unthinkable years ago. You could go down the street to the candy store, walk back. Your parents never even had a thought something would happen. This is a different world now. My parents would have never have ever thought something like this could happen. They are Biden migrants, Trump said. They are flooding our country. They are flooding our cities and our states. I tell you something, Trump is out there making an aggressive play for New York and New Jersey, and I think if he keeps telling these stories of these illegals and these attacks on children, if he keeps running ads and they get aggressive, I think there is a strong possibility he makes massive inroads in North Jersey and Manhattan and Long Island and the 5 boroughs. I'm not prepared to predict he wins New York, but if this stuff keeps happening and it doesn't seem to be abating, I think it's a massive strategic blunder if they don't play up these stories. I don't mean play them up in a cynical way. I mean continue to tell the story and keep it. This is the same city where, illegals beat up a cop and are released without bail the same day and flip off the media while it happens. They are worried out there. Axios has a real concern that this guy that's been advising the Biden campaign, Mike Donilon, is out of his mind because this guy who advised Biden in 2020 is apparently saying to Biden, let's just stick with the plan and keep attacking Trump and threats to democracy. Just keep saying threats to democracy over and over again. And apparently Democrats are saying, we're losing minority support. We're losing women. Like all the polls say, young people, black folks, Hispanic folks, they're all moving toward Trump. We're losing ground here. And this Mike Donilon, I guess, keeps saying, I don't care. We're sticking with democracy, and Trump's an ogre who wants to steal democracy away from us. That's the horse we rode in on, and that's the one we're going to continue to ride. And I guess this is a huge piece from Axios saying Democrats are totally doubting this guy Donilon, who is apparently saying, you know what? The American people are going to do the right thing. They did in 2020, and they're going to again. When all is said and done, we're going to continue to tell the story about how democracy is under attack. And the only way to restore goodness and decency and mom and pop Americana and apple pie is to restore it with this octogenarian who's been in public office for 60 years. Joe Biden. He'll protect democracy. Hard to make the case you're going to protect democracy when 13-year-olds are being raped in broad daylight in an American park. That's just the latest. Protect democracy? How about protect your citizens? You think that works again? Can you run that same play again? This Donilon guy thinks that's going to work. Apparently, according to Axios, he just keeps giving interviews saying, yeah.
I know everybody's freaked out that we should be focusing on the economy or whatever. We're just going to keep talking about democracy because that's the one that brought us to the dance, and that's the one we're going to stay with. Not that I want to give Biden any help, but do you think it's going to work again? Democracy, Fast Eddie?
I don't. I actually
don't either.
Yeah.
Nobody believes we're safer. Who thinks we're safer? Like, if you want to be this great father, paternalistic figure, I'm going to restore decency and order and goodness to the country. I'm going to protect democracy. Our fellow citizens aren't being protected, and we all know it. We're cash-strapped. Our women are being raped and murdered. Children are being raped and murdered by illegals that are breaking in by the millions. Again, we're on the brink of war in multiple destinations. Oh, did you see yesterday? Speaking of that, I didn't get to this. The beady-eyed John Kirby with the perfectly pressed pocket square and the tie clip, 1950 tortoiseshell glasses. Honey, I'm home. That guy. The beady-eyed John Kirby wants everybody to know it is perfectly normal, even though Keith Kellogg, who was the national security advisor to Trump's administration, came on the show last week and said, they're sending a message, Russia is, by sending warships into the waters off of the Cuban coast. You know, just a little bit south of Florida. Russian submarines, nukes, are sailing in to waters very near the United States. And I asked Keith Kellogg, I said, is that common? Do they do this? He said, no. They would have known and seen this coming some time ago and said, you'd better not. Why don't you head on back home? Don't think about bringing that in here. He said, no, this is highly abnormal, Keith Kellogg says to me. And I mean, like my wife asked me, why is this not a bigger news story? I said, I don't know. Well, rest assured, the beady-eyed John Kirby says, this is common. It happens all the time.
A Russian fleet has reportedly left Havana. Do you know where it's going and what your level of concern is about it?
I can't speak for the Russian Navy. No, I don't have insight as to what their course and speed is and where they're going. And we've already talked about this. It's important to keep it in perspective. The Russians do this every few years. They make an excursion to the Caribbean and to Latin American waters. That's not new.
Yeah. It's all the time. I mean, it's very, very common. I mean, what hostile nation doesn't send nuclear subs into waters not far from our coast? It's a little excursion every few years. Nothing to see. No big deal. What's that up there? Chinese spy balloon. No big deal. It's been up there for 8 days. It's flying over a military installation. Nah, it's nothing. We'll shoot it down in a few days once it's over the water safely. No big deal. We're going to protect democracy, says the Biden campaign. Protect democracy? Our women are being murdered. Russian nuke ships are sailing off the coast of Florida. We protect democracy? We're being invaded. So the Democrats are getting a little concerned, and they're going to this Donilon guy going, do you think maybe we should talk about the economy? Nope. Full steam ahead on protecting democracy. Hey, Mike Lindell and MyPillow, you know the name. 20 years they've been singing the jingle on Fox News and on the radio. And it's no secret that Mike and the company have come under a lot of scrutiny and a lot of attack. Big box stores have tossed MyPillow from their stores. Even the online retailers now won't sell MyPillow products. And who does that hurt, really? I mean, yeah, I understand they don't like Mike's position on the election or whatever, but Mike employs hundreds of Americans, hundreds of Minnesotans who make great products. If you know the MyPillow products, I sleep on them every night. So does my dog, Dean. They're great products. And he wants to sell them to you at unbelievable prices, by the way, but they're backed with a 10-year warranty, 60-day money-back guarantee. And most importantly, again, they're made here in the United States. So it's not something he's asking me to say. It's just something I'd like to remind you of, that a guy who has an opinion, who happens to own a very successful American company and employs a lot of Americans who make great American products that a lot of you have bought and owned or are looking to buy and own. I just want you to know that while he takes it on the chin a lot out there for having the positions he has, he wants to keep his employees busy. He wants to keep the company moving along. And so he's passing on huge, huge savings to you and what he's calling the $25 extravaganza. Getting the word out, I want to invite you to check out this $25 extravaganza today. 2 multi-pack MyPillows, just $25. MyPillow sandals, just $25. I'm looking at the list of these deals right now. 6-pack towel set, just $25. 6-pack of towels, $25. And the MyPillows with the new Giza fabric, just $25. And here's the thing, if you order any or all of this stuff, if you exceed $75 with your order, he ships it to you for free. So free shipping on anything $75 or over. And look, with all those deals and so many more at just $25 a piece, I think you'll be very, very pleased with not just the quality, but the price point and the free shipping. It's MyPillow.com. I hope you'll use the promo code ChrisPodcast. MyPillow.com, ChrisPodcast, to take advantage of all these savings. Get that free shipping over $75. Or call 800-932-5056. Great operators, American-based operators. You can call and say, hey, I'm with you. And hang in there, 800-932-5056. Don't forget the promo code ChrisPodcast. It lets them know you listen, which I appreciate, but more importantly, get you that deal. MyPillow.com or 800-932-5056. Promo code ChrisPodcast. How about this for a headline? More retirees consider returning to work as high inflation squeezes. Not a surprise. That's exactly what I've been telling you. It's going on in my own personal life. I know people who have retired and said, I don't like the odds of what I've saved being enough. I'd better go back to work. A growing number of retired Americans considering returning to work as they continue to battle chronic inflation. This is a new survey. Fox Business put this out. About 44% of respondents say they're thinking about looking for work because Social Security not adequately kept pace with high inflation. Consumers grappling with a number of financial headwinds, including steep interest rates, ongoing inflation that has made the cost of everything from rent to gasoline to groceries more expensive. Meanwhile, at CNBC, how immigrants are helping keep jobs growth hot. We talked about this last week. Immigrants, both legal and illegal, are the ones that are taking all these jobs that are being added to the economy. You know, when the illegals aren't raping 13-year-old girls in Queens, they're taking the new jobs that have been created. And Biden's student loan reprieve now helping run a federal deficit of $2 trillion, reports the Washington Times. And as I just told you, they're going to stick with the horse. Democracy is under attack. Good luck. Tommy Piggott with us, RNC's Director of Strategic Communications. It's interesting, Tommy. I welcome you back. There's this story at Axios today that Biden's brain, Mike Donilon, his longtime aide, is the guy that's in charge of messaging the second-term campaign, and they're going to stick with Trump's a threat to democracy, despite everything that I just said. Good morning.
Yeah, despite everything that you just said, and also despite the fact that voters view Biden as a threat to democracy. They view him as the threat to democracy. And it's no wonder why everything Democrats say and threaten and smear people about, it turns out they're usually the ones doing. They're the ones that are weaponizing the justice system. They're the ones that are censoring opposing voices online. They're the ones that are targeting parents at school board meetings. And then on top of that, there are all the issues you just mentioned, whether it's the border, whether it's inflation, whether it's the fact that illegal aliens are the ones that are taking these jobs that are being created. And I use the word created very loosely. Oftentimes it's just recovered. So, I mean, it's so many examples of how Biden's policies have failed. And they clearly, from that Axios article, have zero intention of addressing any of the policies that actually affect people in their everyday lives.
I have a hard time even picking one because they're all so exceptional. But I also mentioned a little while ago, it was remarkable to me that the White House's official position on Russian nuke heads on Russian warships floating around off the coast of Florida near Cuba. That's standard stuff. That happens all the time. Russia often takes their nuke subs out for spins and floats around the southern tip of Florida. No big deal. That's their official position, which reminded me of the Chinese spy balloon for 8 days, Tommy. I mean, that's so rearview mirror of all the things we've talked about, you know, women and children being raped and killed by illegals invading the country. I'm not sure where you pick, but it's a buffet of mess that you could choose as, I guess, communications director at the RNC.
Yeah, I mean, I think, and part of the issue with the foreign policy is that Biden is running on that as being one of his major successes, is his foreign policy, which is absurd. He goes out there and claims that he's a foreign policy expert. He says that all of the time. And yet, like you said, we have Russian nuclear weapons off the coast of Florida. We have a Chinese spy base being set up in Cuba, just miles away from Florida. You have spy balloons coming over the United States. You have, instead of historic peace agreements in the Middle East, you have war in the Middle East. You have Russia invading Ukraine. You have China being completely provocative, not just with a spy balloon, but across the world. I mean, for him to go out there and claim foreign policy is his expertise, it shows you how enormously out of touch. And on top of all that, he still has not had any accountability for Afghanistan. He has the exact same team in place that promised the American people that would be a safe and orderly withdrawal, and he still insists he was right. I mean, that for me shows he's unfit to be president of the United States. In addition to all of the concerns about his mental fitness for office, is the fact that he thinks that what happened in Afghanistan was a success and that he refuses to change anything about any sort of approach to foreign policy going forward. That puts all of us in danger and should be a massive alarm for the American people when it comes to our national security.
All of this stuff is very, very substantive, and it's also not a small matter, but I think it's still probably not even near the top of the list when we talk about his physical and mental fitness for the job. And I know it's something that a lot of people focus on because it's something we can physically see in front of us all the time. All of us have elderly people in our lives or have had, and we see when people are in decline. It happens to all of us eventually. It is something that's focused on a lot. But all of this stuff that we just mentioned, I think precedes that. But even so, it's interesting. With our own eyes, we see it. And I didn't get to this yesterday, Tommy, but Karine Jean-Pierre, the White House press secretary, lit a lot of people's heads on fire about this. I was kind of surprised at the reaction. This is 91, clip 91, Fast Eddie, from yesterday. Pepe Le Pew talking about this video of Biden and Obama at this big fundraiser in L.A. when Obama leads him by the hand off the stage. I just wanted to get your reaction to this because I didn't play it yesterday. Listen.
There seems to be a sort of rash of videos that have been edited to make the president appear especially frail or mentally confused. I'm wondering if the White House is especially worried about the fact that this appears to be a pattern that we're seeing more often.
Yeah, and I think you all have called this the cheap fakes video, and that's exactly what they are. They are cheap fakes video. They are done in bad faith, and some of your news organization have been very clear, have stressed that these the right wing critics of the president have a credibility problem because of the fact checkers have repeatedly caught them pushing misinformation, disinformation, and so we see this, and this is something coming from your part of the world, calling them cheap fakes and misinformation.
All right, so she says she's fond of this term cheap fakes. That was thrown around a lot on social media yesterday. Tommy Piggott, communications at the RNC. Cheap fakes. What we're watching is scurrilous guys in their basement making AI videos of Biden looking frail and infirm. It's not real. Cheap fakes, Tommy.
Well, it shows how desperate they are because nothing could be further from the truth. The White House is in the midst of a multi-day public meltdown over unedited, uncropped, and unfiltered videos that are publicly available of Joe Biden. That's where we currently are with this White House. They're in a panic over sharing unedited, unfiltered video, just raw video feed, and then asking a question like, what is Biden doing? That has sent this White House into a complete and total tailspin. And I would encourage people to follow at RNC Research because we're not going to stop holding Biden accountable. We're not going to stop showing people what's actually happening because even Democrats have concerns about Biden's mental fitness, and them going out there and making up this term cheap fakes when it's really just unedited, raw video that anyone can access shows they have no answer for these concerns from the American people. And again, if they wanted to put them to bed, he should do more interviews. He should do more press conferences. He's not, because they share those same concerns. They know the more that he's out in public, the more he embarrasses himself and the country.
I tell you, when Obama shows up on the scene, and Tommy, you guys at RNC Research, feel free. I have pinned a video at the top of my X feed for a couple of years now that I think is significant, and I took it right off of my television. Do you remember the one and only time Obama very publicly visited Biden's White House? And I was so struck by the imagery, Tommy, that I I happened to be watching it at home live, and I recorded it and hit rewind on my DVR just so I could physically tape it with my own phone I was holding. It's footage of Obama mingling after a presentation at the White. I think it was a celebration of Obamacare or something. And Obama is greeting and yucking it up, and all these people want to shake his hand, and then the vice president is standing next to him, and she's shaking hands. Biden walks up behind them and is trying to get Obama's attention, and you can see it. Barack, he's saying his name, Barack, and he's putting his hand on his shoulder. Kamala Harris and Barack Obama completely ignore the man. He's the president of the United States. Their backs are turned to him. No one in the room is interested in him, totally ignoring him. I've posted that for 2 years at the top of my X feed because I say this is evidence of who's really running the show. It's clear the guy's not running anything. And the instant reaction from the left is, that's fake. That's a doctored video. AI. We're in this weird place now where everybody can claim what you and I are physically seeing is made up. Cheap fakes. It's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a true emperor has no clothes moment. It's like the townspeople are all looking at Joe Biden saying, hey, the emperor has no clothes. And the Biden White House is saying, shut up. Yes, he does. I mean, that's where we are right now. And it's like, that's exactly where we are with this White House. And it shows, again, how desperate they are. And I think kind of to your point as well, it's interesting about this latest video of Biden at the fundraiser is that Obama assumed he was supposed to grab Biden's hand and lead him out.
Yes.
He assumed he was supposed to do that. And I think that's just as concerning as anything else in that video. Why did he assume that Biden wouldn't be able to fight his way off the stage? Why did he assume he was supposed to grab his hand, put his arm around him, and lead him out, direct him out? That's very concerning to me. And the American people deserve to see this stuff. And again, this is just unedited, raw video that is throwing the White House into a real panic.
Let's be charitable, Tommy Piggott. Let's just be charitable and say Biden didn't freeze on the stage. Biden was just basking in the applause of a fundraiser. Fine. Your point is important, and this point is significant. It's the same as the video at the top of my X feed. Barack Obama felt he could or should or does with regularity when he's in the room tell Biden when time's up, we're leaving, let's go, and jerks him along like a pet. I mean, that, like, to be charitable, Joe Biden is treated like a pet to Barack Obama, and he determines when it's time to leave the stage. Now, Joe Biden, we're pretending, leads the free world. You're not to be led around by another guy as a dog.
Well, I think it goes to also all of these different examples where Biden goes to a press conference and he says, I've been given a list of people to call on. There are Axios stories where he complains that his staff is treating him like children. He goes to events and they're all staged. There's videos of his staff going into a Wawa, basically telling the cashier every single interaction that Biden is going to do, down to Biden giving him a tip. And then Biden comes in and does it almost like it's a script and a play. I mean, that's where we are with this president. And this goes to the other point where if they actually were serious about putting these concerns to bed, they would have Biden do unscripted interviews. Yeah. They would have him go out there and actually answer questions, and they don't do that. And to me, that's such an easy fix for all these concerns that we have. If he truly behind the scenes is some genius, I think it shows that they actually share these concerns because they're not having him do more of these interviews and unscripted events. Instead, they're doubling down on scripting all of them.
Which brings me to this debate coming up. I don't know how you think it's going to go. I don't know what anybody's expecting. I've been asking people at the Harumph Society, my newsletter, Tommy Piggott, Communications at the RNC. I've been asking them how they think the narrative will be spun outside of the debate afterward. Is Biden, are they lowering expectations for the guy? Are they raising them? Is it no change? He held his own. He did fine. It's a wash. How do you expect they'll spin this? It's a week from tomorrow.
I think they're going to spin it as, that he's surpassed expectations because, take a State of the Union, for example. Biden basically didn't faint on the stage and they said it was a massive success. I mean, that's what their bar is for Joe Biden. So I expect them to do the same thing with this debate. And the thing is that, President Trump is a great debater. He's a fighter. He's going to go in there. We'll see how the moderators act. We'll see if they're fair and unbiased. I'm not holding my breath on that, but President Trump is a fighter. He has the record to really back up what he's saying. So I'm confident President Trump is going to win the debate by massive margins. But I think the Democrats are basically going to lower all the expectations they possibly can because they know that Biden, for one, doesn't have a record to stand on, And for two, has all these concerns around his ability to actually deliver a message effectively when it comes to speeches or debates or anything else.
It's this Axios story says Democrats are freaked out because he's peeling off black votes, young votes, Hispanic votes. I don't know about women, but in every other demographic, Trump is peeling off votes, and Democrats are freaked out. And apparently the strategy is we're going to continue to talk about threats to democracy. I hope that's true, actually, because we're in the middle of a hot mess in every direction you look. And if that's all they've got to sell, then good luck to them, I guess. Trump is coming to Temple University on Saturday. Interesting. We've not seen that out of any Republican candidate in, I don't think, modern American political history. Trump playing in avenues and places like Detroit and Atlanta. He's openly said he thinks we can play in New York and New Jersey. I don't know. I wouldn't predict that, but it's interesting he's suggesting they're trying.
Yeah, I think it goes to your point about the fact that his Make America Great Again appeal is really reaching voters that traditionally have been solid Democrat constituencies. Even CNN in a recent clip was speechless about how well President Trump was doing in the polls with Black Americans, historic margins that we haven't seen in decades. And like you just said, this is part of a pattern from President Trump of going to New Jersey, going to the Bronx, going to Detroit, now going to Philadelphia, making sure he goes to every single neighborhood, speaks to voters, shares his vision for all Americans. And I think what's also important in a lot of these states is that a lot of these really deep blue areas are in these swing states. So this is also about making sure you expand your appeal in these battleground states while playing offense electorally around the map. And if you look at the polls, it's working. We're seeing Trump leading in all of the key battleground states. We're seeing him making surges in Minnesota and Virginia. We're seeing New Jersey having extremely tight polling and tighter polling than we've ever seen in decades. So I think his appeal is working. He's playing offense, and he's playing offense, one, because he's an amazing candidate that can really connect with voters, and two, he has the record to back up that message.
Tommy Piggott is the Director of Strategic Communications at the RNC, and it's always a pleasure to catch up, Tommy. Thanks for your visit today.
Hey, thanks for having me on.
Let's go to number 88. For those of you that missed this yesterday, it's just delightful. Tommy was referencing it. Harry Enton, one of their pollsters at CNN, in absolute panic mode. I'm speechless, breathless at the numbers I'm seeing with black voters out there.
So where does the race stand among African-American voters right now?
Yeah, I keep looking for this to change, to go back to a historical norm, and it simply put has not yet. So this is the margin, or Biden and Trump among black voters, compare where we were at this point in 2020, compare where we are now. At this point, look at this. In 2020, Joe Biden was getting 86% of the African-American vote. Look at where it is now. It's 70%. That's a 16-point drop, John. And more than that, it's not just that Joe Biden is losing ground, it's that Donald Trump is gaining ground. You go from 7%, single digits at this point in 2020, to now 21%. And again, John, I keep looking for signs that this is going to go back to normal, and I don't see it yet in the polling. If anything, right now we're careening towards a historic performance for a Republican presidential candidate, the likes of which we have not seen in 6 decades.
And when you dig into this number here, what is the makeup of that number?
This is where we get very interesting. So I decided to dive deeper into the crosstabs, figure out where is it that Joe Biden is truly struggling among black voters. All right, so this is black voters, Biden versus Trump margin. Look at black voters age 50 and older, and you'll see, look, Joe Biden was leading amongst this group at this point by 83 points back in 2020. Now it's 74 points. So, yeah, a slight decline in that margin,
almost
but
10
nothing
points,
out of this
yes.
world. Look at black voters under the age of 50. Holy cow, folks. Holy cow. Look at this. Joe Biden was up by 80 points among this group back at this point in 2020. Look at where that margin has careened down towards. It's now just, get this, 37 points. That lead has dropped by more than half, Mr. Berman. I just never seen anything like this. I'm like speechless, because you always look at history and you go, okay, this is a historic moment. If this polling is anywhere near correct, we are looking at a historic moment right now where black voters under the age of 50, which have historically been such a big part of the Democratic coalition, are leaving it in droves.
Well, hey, I mean, it's Juneteenth. And it's the perfect opportunity to remind folks that it was the Republican Party that ended slavery. Donald Trump coming to Temple. I hope it'd be nice if he brought up Juneteenth. Hope everybody had a nice Juneteenth this week. Just as a reminder, That was all Lincoln. The Democrat. By the way, just as a reminder, we had to send police into schools in the South run by Democrats to desegregate schools. Just as a reminder, everybody. How you doing, Temple? Maybe just throw that out there. It's remarkable. I hope it's true. It would be a wonderful, wonderful political sea change, and the country would benefit remarkably. And I have every reason to believe that is what's happening. Young minorities, just the same as young whites and anybody else, are all waking up to the fact it is unaffordable and unsafe, and this trajectory the country is on is untenable for young people's futures, no matter their race or gender. And my fervent prayer is that, in fact, these polls are right. And regardless of your demographic, if you're a young person looking down the road trying to have a family and making something of yourself, things look grim.
The Chris Stigall Show podcast.